In the quiet early hours of September 25th, 1982, the small city of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, awoke to a horror that defied comprehension. George Emil Banks, a man once seen as calm, soft-spoken, and ordinary, descended into a storm of madness that would take with him 13 souls, including 5 of his own children. Haunted by paranoia, racial delusions, and a lifetime of inner torment, Banks transformed his home and neighborhood into a scene of unspeakable tragedy. When the gunfire ceased, Wilkes-Barre was changed forever. Families shattered, a community stunned, and law enforcement plunged into one of the darkest manhunts in Pennsylvania history. Yet, behind the rampage lay a tortured mind, one torn between identity, anger, and the demons of psychosis. Decades later, the case still echoes through the halls of justice and the corridors of the mental health debate, a haunting reminder of how one man's unraveling can become a city's nightmare. But before we get into that, this video is made for educational and awareness purposes only. All information comes from publicly available sources. Hey, what's up, yo? It's me, I'm
Bad Ape.
And we're back at it to do it again.
Bad Ape.
Thanks for clicking in. I do appreciate you. And now, let's roll around town and see what Wilkes-Barre has to offer us. Maybe something to eat, maybe something to drink, and a feast for the eyes. The city of Wilkes-Barre is about 100 or more so miles from Philadelphia and Harrisburg. Nestled along the Susquehanna River in northeastern Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre is a charming city rich in history, natural beauty, and community spirit, known for its industrial roots and scenic surroundings. The city offers a blend of cultural attractions, outdoor recreation, and local flavors that reflect the characters of Pennsylvania's Wyoming Valley. And I'm going to take you on a tour. If and when you decide to visit Wilkes-Barre, you can tell them Bad Ape Nation X sent you. Mohegan Sun Arena and KC Plaza is the premier entertainment and sports venue in the region. It hosts major concerts, sporting events, and performances year-round. Home to the Wilkes-Barre and Scranton Penguins and AHL affiliates of the Pittsburgh Penguins, the arena is a must-visit for hockey fans and music lovers alike. And I assure you, you will not be disappointed. And over here, located just minutes from downtown Wilkes-Barre, Seven Tubs Recreation Area is a natural wonder filled with waterfalls, rock formations, and scenic trails named for its glacially formed sandstone tubs. The area is perfect for hiking, photography, family gatherings, offering a peaceful escape into nature when you want to disconnect from the digital world. I highly recommend it. You will not be disappointed. And once we spin around and go over here, the F.M. Kirby Center for the Performing Arts is a beautiful restored Art Deco theater that showcases concepts, plays, and classic film screenings. Built in the 1930s, the venue's elegant design and excellent acoustics make it one of the city's cultural landmarks and a hub for live entertainment in the Wyoming Valley. It's pretty awesome. And if you have enough time in your schedule, I highly recommend River Common Park is a scenic public space, stretching along the Susquehanna River, offering stunning views, featuring walking trails, gardens, and an amphitheater. It's the perfect spot for a leisurely stroll, community events, or simply enjoying a sunset over the water. The park also plays host to seasonal festivals and farmers markets. You won't be disappointed. It's definitely a real cool spot. Now here's something you probably didn't know. Wilkes-Barre and the surrounding Wyoming Valley are known for their deep Eastern European roots, and no food better represents that heritage than the pierogi. These tender dumplings are typically filled with creamy mashed potatoes, sharp cheddar cheese, onions, and sometimes sauerkraut or ground meat. They are boiled or pan-fried in butter, served with caramelized onions and sour cream. A true comfort food that's as rich in flavor as it is in tradition. Pierogies are so beloved in the region that they are celebrated at local festivals, church fundraisers, and even sports events where the Pocono Pierogies mascot races are a fan favorite. It's pretty cool, man. But you want to know something else? For those of you looking to experience a taste of Wilkes-Barre outside of the pierogi, or if you want something to wash the pierogi down with, there's Susquehanna Brewing Company. It's the city's pride. Founded in Pittston, the family-run brewery has gained national recognition for its award-winning lagers and ales. Their flagship Hop Accelerator IPA and Golden Cold Lager are local favorites brewed with high-quality ingredients and traditional craftsmanship. The brewery's tap room offers tours and tastings, making it a must-visit destination for any beer enthusiast. But our research don't stop here. It takes us right into Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. Now we're going to get down on George Emil Banks. He was born June 22nd, 1942 in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. His father was black. His mother was white, and they were not married. This fact would later fester inside Banks and shape his view of the world. He served in the U.S. Army.
From now on, you will speak only when spoken to, and the first and last words out of your filthy sewers will be, sir. Do you maggots understand that?
Sir, yes, sir.
Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair.
Sir, yes, sir.
If you ladies leave my island, you will be a weapon. You will be a minister of death, praying for war. But until then,
Well, he was partially right. In 1961, at the age of 19, after being discharged from the Army, Banks and some accomplices saw fit to rob a tavern. During the melee, Banks injured the unarmed owner by shooting him. He was sentenced to 6 to 15 years in prison, which was extended when he briefly escaped in 1964. However, he was granted parole in 1969, and his sentence was commuted by the then governor, Milton Schacht, in 1974. Once he was released from prison, he married a black woman, Doris M. Banks, on August 23, 1969. They had 2 daughters together. The couple divorced in 1976, after which Banks exclusively dated white women. Banks held various jobs. Despite his criminal record and serving 8 years in prison, Banks was hired as a correctional officer at Camp Hill, Pennsylvania in 1980. He had multiple relationships, fathering several biracial children and expressing fears about how racism would later affect him. Then maybe somebody should have worn You know what? Never mind. Banks had shared with co-workers he believed a race war was imminent, and he wanted to spare the 5 children that he had fathered with 4 women. These tensions and mental health struggles set the stage for his crimes later. On September 6th, he locked himself in a guard tower with a shotgun and threatened to take his own life. As a result, he was placed on extended leave and ordered to undergo mental health examinations at the Harrisburg Hospital. According to court documents and psychiatric evaluations, Banks' motives were rooted in delusional beliefs that his biracial children would be doomed to suffer in a racist society. He reportedly believed he was, quote, saving them, end quote, from that suffering. He wanted to spare the 5 children that he had fathered with the 4 women from the horrors of the racism he suffered as a child. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court found evidence of paranoia and mental illness, including beliefs that the government and local officials conspired against him. By September 1982, he had broken up with his girlfriend Sharon Mazzillo, who at one point lived with them as they were going through custody battle of their young son. At this point, Banks was living with 3 of his girlfriends and their 4 children that he had fathered on the night of September 1982, when it all began. Overindulging in alcohol, abusing drugs, mixed with mental instability. That's not a good combo, and it don't look good from here, champ. On September 25th, 1982, Banks began his killing spree. At his home on School Bus Lane in Wilkes-Barre, Jenkins Township, there he departed 8 people, including 5 of his own children and 3 women who were mothers of his children. The victims ranged in age from 1 to their early 30s. Banks used an AR-15, the semi-automatic rifle, and most of his victims were at close range. Dressed in his military fatigues, went outside, where he saw 22-year-old Jimmy Olsen and 24-year-old Ray Hall Jr. Leaving the house across the street, he sent shots at both of them, reportedly yelling that they, quote, would not tell anyone about this, end quote. He hit both men, fatally wounding Hall. Olsen survived. Banks drove away. He then drove to Heather Highlands Mobile Home Park, continuing his rampage. When Banks arrived, he saw his former girlfriend, Sharon Mazzillo, and their son, Kesemayu, of whom he had been trying to gain custody. Banks forced his way in. There he delivered shots to Mazzillo. He then turned the rifle on his sleeping son. Banks turned the rifle on Sharon's mother, who was trying to call police. Sharon received a shot, hit directly in the heart, and 3 others to the head, and Sharon's 7-year-old nephew, who was also in the home. Banks wasn't aware that Sharon's brothers were in the home, one hid in a closet, the other under his mother's bed. They were the only survivors. They called the police.
Police, fire, and medical. Okay, what's going on?
And identified Banks as the shooter. When police examined the victims at the mobile home park, they connected the incident to Olsen's and Hall's shooting that had been discovered at Schoolhouse Lane. They next found Banks' victims in his house. Police began to search for Banks, who had long abandoned his vehicle. He had then carjacked someone.
Get your ass up out the car. Get the out.
After abandoning the stolen vehicle, Banks stopped in an isolated grassy area to rest. He subsequently fell asleep. When Banks woke up, you know what he decided to do? Swing on over to Mom's house, also in Wilkes-Barre. It was said he had confessed his crimes to her. She drove him to the house of Jacob Witt, a friend of Banks, where he sent her away and prepared for a standoff with police.
Are you keyed up, Darren?
During the standoff between Banks and the police, law enforcement brought his mother to their base to talk with Banks. They tried various tactics to reach Banks to surrender, including having a false news report played over the Wilk radio, saying that the children were alive and needed blood to survive. Finally, after a 4-hour standoff, his old co-worker, Robert Brunson, was able to talk Banks out of the house, ending the standoff. On September 30th, 1982, Banks was charged with 8 counts of murder, attempted murder, aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, grand theft auto, armed robbery, and felonious theft. Banks was held without bail. In total, 13 people were departed and 1 survivor. The brutality of the crime shook the nation. Trial began on June 6, 1983, at the Luzerne County Courthouse in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Esquire Albert Joseph Flora Jr. was appointed to be Banks' defense attorney. At the time, fresh out of law school, he was called to help defend George Banks. He said, quote, "It was clear that Banks was insane. I found him to be intelligent, but yet at the same time, I saw he was severely mentally ill when you listen to his thought processes and how he explained things," end quote, said Flora. And Banks insisted on testifying. He said that he only wounded his victims and that the police caused their deaths. several scene witnesses, even Banks' own family members, and the survivor, James Olson, identified Banks as the sole perpetrator of all the crimes. Olson went on to state, quote, "He shot me and left me for dead," end quote. Jim Zardecki, the chief of county detectives on the case, spoke with the news station. He said nothing could have prepared him for the sights he saw on Schoolhouse Lane. Quote, "The thing that stands out the most of all was there was a little girl sitting in the bed with her back against the wall, and she had this fear of look in her eyes that you could see. There was a bullet hole between her eyes. Her head was cocked and blood was spattered behind on the wall," end quote, explains Zardecki. Damn. Closing arguments took place on June 21st, 1983. Banks' attorneys argued that he was insane. The jury found Banks guilty of 12 counts of first degree, 1 count of third degree, attempted murder, aggravated assault, and 1 count each of robbery, theft, and endangering the life of another person. On June 22nd, 1983, the jury recommended the death penalty to get him out of here. Banks was incarcerated in the maximum security unit at Huntington until November 1985. His appeals reached the U.S. Supreme Court, but it refused to overturn his verdict. He was then sent to the Correctional Institute at Graterford, where he was housed in a contained housing unit. From 1987 to 2000, Banks' attorneys continued to appeal his case. But what for, might you ask? Well, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear his attorney's argument that he lacked the mental competency to be executed. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge signed the death warrant twice for Banks to get out of here. However, both times, federal appellate courts stayed his execution in 2001, 2006, and in 2008. Court held hearings about the mental state of Banks to determine if he could be executed. He exhibited delusional behavior that caused the court to rule him incompetent for execution. During this period, various appeals were being heard by state and federal courts. In 2010, another hearing was held on his competency. His attorney said his mental state had deteriorated significantly since 1982. A judge ruled Banks was mentally incompetent for execution or to assist his attorneys in seeking clemency. He would continue to be held in a restricted housing unit at Graterford Prison. In September 2017, he was still on death row. He was later transferred to SCI Phoenix in May of 2018. On September 2nd, 2025, at the age of 83, while incarcerated at SCI Phoenix, Pennsylvania, in his cell, Banks closed his eyes for the last time. The coroner said in the statement that his autopsy was performed and the cause of his death was kidney cancer. His death marked the end of one of Pennsylvania's most infamous murder spree cases. Despite his mental illness and claims of delusion, his crime spree remained among the deadliest familicide murders in U.S. history. The case of George Emil Banks illustrates the convergence of mental struggles, racial identity, conflict, and systemic failure to provide intervention before tragedy struck. His spree killings were not motivated by greed or revenge, but by psychological collapse and delusional justifications. In death, he leaves behind questions about the balance between justice, mental health, and mercy in capital cases. This is a special shout out to all of the subscribers and the supporters of the channel. At Shamar Jackson 9911, at Frankie Shea 0102, True ZC4YZ, Suge for Life, Sheen's Machine, also at Douglas James-D for Show, and Lawrence Kitch 3290. Also, Nama3 Nitto and Skybird C8R, Most Def 9119. Thank you for commenting on the channel. It really does mean a lot. Also, Shadow Gaming, Katie Flynn, Stays on Top, and Sean Lynette, CH, Francine, and B-Sud56, and the other subscribers that I can't see. Thank you for your comments, your likes, your shares, and your support.
Oh no!
Okay, it's about that time. Subscribe, like, comment, share. You know the drill. And thank you for riding with
Bad ape.
And until we see you on the next one.
Bad ape.